Hello, 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 and good morning to our listeners from around the world. Welcome to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity. My name is Brian Westley Johnson, and I am so glad you're here with us. This is a time for all of us to come together and create a space that includes you, our listeners, to have real conversations about what's going on in our world and what's important to us. I'm joined today by some very, very special people. We got Candice Harper on the line, and we're going to have Tami Gaines coming on in just a second. Good morning, Candy.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be
Yes, I know it's been too long. It's been too long, girl.
back.
Um,
A whole 3 days, but I'm glad to
I
be back.
know, I know, it's like crazy. It's like as time goes on, I kind of miss you guys. I'm like, wait a minute, where's Candy at? Where's Tammy?
Well, you're here
Um,
Monday through Friday. You're here every morning, right?
I'm here every morning, so when you're not here, I'm missing you guys.
That's dedication, honey. I mean, yeah,
Hey, this is what I do for my peeps out there.
right, right.
You
I love
know.
it. I love it.
Listen, before we begin, I just want to remind our audience out there, listen, join in the fun. We want to hear your questions, your comments, your thoughts about whatever we're talking about, or maybe what we're not talking about. We want you to let us know what's on your mind and we can have a conversation about it. Um, and we got Tammy's who just joined. Hey, Tammy.
Good
Hey,
morning. How are you?
Good morning. It's that
Happy
Friday. It's that Friday
Friday.
buzz, right?
Absolutely.
TGIF. Um. Well, it's funny. I have to begin our session today with a bit of sad news. We heard about this last night. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but singer-songwriter and guitarist David Crosby, a
Yeah,
yeah,
founding
that's sad.
member of two of the most popular and enormously influential rock units in the 60s, the Byrds, number one, and the great songwriting team of Crosby, Still, and Nash that later became Crosby, Still, Nash, and Young. He died yesterday.
yeah,
He was 81 years old. They didn't talk about the cause of his death, which is fine. But on behalf of all of us, we wanted to send our condolences and prayers to the entire family and all the fans that adored and loved his music
yeah,
during that period of time. I mean, I don't think there was any artist that wasn't influenced by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I can't think of anyone.
yeah,
Even modern, even more modern artists that are producing songs now, their songs are influenced by them. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Did you guys listen to them or listen to any of their music back in the day?
Maybe young, very young. I don't know
Yeah.
that I specifically would seek them out, but they're one of those iconic. David Crosby is like one of those iconic people that just kind of is in the music echelon of our history,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, um,
And I mean, he did stuff with everybody.
yeah,
I mean, from Tom Jones to, I mean, everybody. So we want to send our condolences and prayers out to the entire family. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
was sad to hear about that. I did listen to them growing up.
yeah,
I had a
yeah,
very eclectic taste in music because I grew up in an all-white community. We're the only
yeah,
black
yeah.
family.
yeah,
So we have the most well-rounded taste in music.
hmm And radio was different when I was growing up too. I mean, there was one radio station in Detroit, WDRQ, and they just played good music, y'all. They
mm,
played everything from Earth, Wind, and Fire to the Eagles
mm,
to Elton John. I mean, the Michael Jackson and the Jackson Five. I mean, they just played. If it was good, they played it. And
Mhm.
nowadays things are more, genre
Um,
specific
yeah,
now. So I kind of miss that.
unfortunately.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I kind of miss that. As a musician, that having that different kind of music was important for me. It's part of who I am as a person.
absolutely.
So why don't we go ahead and get started? And Candy, I know you've got a great topic that we want to talk about.
Yeah,
Um, that's important and about what's going on in today's time. So why don't you go ahead and take that?
So yeah, lies is my topic
Lies,
because this whole
lies, lies. Yeah. Y'all
exactly
remember that one?
this whole thing with
I do.
remember that. I remember that one too, Brian. This
Hmm.
whole this whole thing with George Santos. And
Oh,
We
all
talked
these
about.
oh.
all these things that keep coming out and just all that there is on the internet and just the insanity of it all. I mean, I think partially as a society we're not that surprised because what politician who lies, whoa. But I think the fact that there's just so many just it's all the caustic misleading and duplicitousness, and it's probably more lies than almost any public figure that we know of in recent history has told.
Hmm. I
And
can't
so
even keep up with the
you
lies.
can't even keep up with it because it's very much like a I'm trying to think of what's the there's a disorder. It's not sociopathy, but there's a disorder, people who uh uh misrepresent themselves. It's not like they're taking on another personality, but like take on another identity. But there is a psychological disorder. I can't think of the name of it right now. But the reason that I wanted to talk about him is because I feel like lies and lying is one of those things where, as people, we have a lot of moral judgment around it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we've all engaged in it on some level. Maybe not this level, but but on some level. So I figured it would be a good conversation to talk about what's currently going on, and also for people who are sort of in a lie or omission in a relationship or in their relationships. What how can we can explore how do you get out of it,
Mm,
right? So
mm.
I think it would be a good way to round out the conversation, so it's not just, oh,
Ooh.
and there's no sort of positive way to alchemize that.
Mm, mm. Well,
Yeah.
do you guys both kind of delineate lies, like between like the little white lie that people the quote unquote white lie, as opposed to what a bigger lie would be? I mean, what would be a big lie for each one of you? Like type of lie.
Well,
I mean, you go ahead,
no, no,
Tammy.
good.
You're like, let me get on in this one.
I was like, listen, lies are complicated, first of all.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
It's
that's
not,
true.
it starts with a little white lie. And
Hmm.
then because you're comfortable with a little white lie, then you start lying about a little bit bigger things and bigger things.
yeah,
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
always
Yeah.
have said, like, people tell me I'm really direct. It's because I'm incapable of lying.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I told my kids a really quick, funny story. My son's gonna kill me for telling this, but it's worth the tell because this is a pack
Well,
of
it's just
lies.
between us and about a few thousand people, so
Perfect. I won't use his name. Anyway, I dropped him off at his friend's house one night, like on a Friday night, and I knew his mom. I knew his friend's mom was out, and she called me the next morning, and she's like, "Where are the boys?" I said,
Mm,
"They're at your house." She was like, "Nobody's here." I said, "What? This is at like 6 o'clock in the morning."
mm.
So I was like, "Let me call. Look, let me call Shane." I call him. He picks up. He's like, "Hey." I was like, "Hey, where are you?" He's like, "I'm at Evelyn's house." I was like, "Really? That's so interesting because she just called me and said you weren't there." And he was like, uh, he just hung up
Oh.
the phone. And I'm sure he and his friend were like, "Oh my God, how do we get it?" Girl, let me tell you something. I called him back and I said, "Let's try that again. Where are you?" And he goes, "I don't know." I was like, "What do you mean you don't know? How did you get
Oof.
there?" He said, "We walked." I was like, "What address did you walk to?" "I don't
Yeah,
know." I said, "Go wake up that kid and get his address."
yeah.
It gets worse. He
Oh.
Oh,
comes back a few minutes later. He's like, he won't wake up. I
oh my
said,
God.
is he in a
What?
coma? Is it a
Yeah,
medical emergency?
What?
yeah.
Let me tell you, the web of lies was so bad. That was the first time like I beat the hell out of
Oh.
him. He ended up he and his friend slept over at some girl's house.
Oh my goodness.
At
Two
some
black
girl's
boys,
house.
two black boys slept over a white girl's house.
Oh
And the
my God.
parents were home and they knew about it. Now, I don't
Wow.
have to tell you that that's a whole nother story, but anyway, I told Shane, like, once you start a lie, it takes you down the lying rabbit hole. And if you can't
Yeah.
keep track of what you've lied about, like, you're in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
takes
I,
and it's like there's so much energy spent trying to keep and all the lies that you've told in concert that you might as well just told the truth in the first place.
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And I didn't trust him for a very long time. Like, you lost my trust, man.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm. What about you, Tammy? I mean, Candice. What are the type? I mean, do you delineate
I mean,
between?
I think, yeah, Timmy's right. I do think lies are very complicated. And I do, when you say delineate, do you mean what a smaller lie is okay to get away with and a bigger lie is
Yeah, I mean, like, if
judgment?
yeah, I mean, is it? Do you do you have a
Like, do I let
different?
myself
Yeah, yeah. Do you
get away?
like you? Yeah, yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
know.
So my own confession is when I was young, when I look back in hindsight, I learned that lying and manipulating was a way to get what I wanted. Now, let me
Mm,
say that with a
Mm.
caveat. Like, I didn't do it maliciously. I was never out to
Mm-hmm.
hurt anybody else.
mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm.
Right.
But it was about what I wanted in my own, survival and thrival, right? So what I've learned as I've gotten older is that at the base of lying, there is always fear, right?
Mm,
So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think at the base of all of our fears is the loss of love, but there's always some fear we're telling ourselves about, or some, trying to avoid loss or punishment, or whatever it might be. And so I think the difficult part about that is that the delineation is finding where the impact is. So if the impact of your lie is hurtful to others, like this George Santos thing,
Ooh.
mm, mm, mm.
right? This is hurtful to people who trust
Yes.
him, people who need to be able to rely on and trust that he can do his job. And like Tammy was saying, once the lie is told and built upon, how can you even look at that person and verify what they're saying? Or the lie that is told to save yourself from whatever it is that you're afraid of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
that's where I think there's some murkiness in between those two things. But I think that that's where, we can sort of delineate, not saying that if you've told a lie to save yourself that you're a better person, but at least there's somewhere to go as far as, what you can do to personally heal around that. If you're someone who's caustic and you're out there hurting other people with it, I mean, that's just a whole nother level of like, you gotta have your come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, that's a good point,
It's all
Candy.
good points. All good points.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, um, because I think that we do have to think about that, right?
Yes,
Who is the lie hurting? Is it hurting that person or is it hurting other people, including that person? I mean,
yeah,
this dude has lied about, like lying on your resume, right? Back in the day when, I had staff and interviewing people and all that kind of stuff, there always is some form of flubbing on resumes. Okay.
yeah.
But this dude's whole resume was a flub.
So
Yeah, isn't
Whole
he?
doggone thing.
He's so curious.
yeah,
He makes me so curious. It's like, why would you lie about where you worked or went to school? Like, that's an easy phone call.
yeah,
Like, it's like he
Yeah.
didn't even think it through. Like
right.
maybe, like, why didn't you say you went to school like in Zimbabwe?
Right.
Yeah,
At some
Right.
university that they can't easily like get in touch with or communicate.
fact check.
That
Right.
dude did not think this through at all. And
Right.
by
Yeah,
the way, shame on his opponent for not doing his
Right.
background research. Why no one's really talking about his opponent?
Nobody's talking
well,
about his
Shame
maybe
on you.
opponent.
Why didn't you do some digging to see who you were running against so you'd have a more stronger campaign messaging.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I bet he's kicking himself.
I'm sure, Candy, can you imagine what that campaign, like the debate would look like? You didn't go to
Right?
NYU. You didn't work at Goldman Sachs.
Right?
Yeah, right, right. And then he said, "Oh, yes, I did. Well, I have an affidavit here from
Exactly.
da da
Yeah.
da da da. And you said that you graduated,
Mhm.
magna cum laude from. Well, they have no record of you attending that school.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like shame on both of them.
Yeah. And
They're not-
and now and what's so crazy now, I don't know if you have been on Twitter or social media about George Santos. There's now this thing about him dressing in drag.
Mhm.
And they have this one picture of him that really looks, I mean, I'm not going to show it on
Oh my
air,
God,
but
I
it's
didn't see
pretty
that.
doggone close. And it's funny because once that surfaced, do you know the National Republican Congressional Committee took his profile down?
Wow.
It took that. They didn't
Took
do
it,
it before.
but he just,
Yeah.
but he just
It
got
was
put
like
on some
once,
committee.
yeah. He's
Yeah.
on like on
What?
like two of the most
Yeah,
important
he's on like
committees.
the small business committee. That dude's never run a business in his life. Like, what is the thinking? Like, why? I understand, like, they're trying not to lose the seat, but
Yeah.
at what point? At what point is it just too embarrassing?
Right. And it's
I
funny, like what Brian was pointing at, that you can be a liar. We're holding on to you, but drag queen, not so.
exactly, like what?
Love him.
What?
He's
Oh, okay. Say
wrong.
now
This
it's
is
too
where we
far.
draw the line.
Yeah. Like, oh,
Now you've
come on.
gone too far, sir.
Yeah, like really? Like that's like the one of the least things. I'd be like, what? He dresses
You-
in drag, okay, and
okay.
what? At least he's being truthful. You
Right.
know,
Exactly.
you didn't lie about not being a drag queen. You know.
So they're saying I guess there's a new term for pathological liars, and on Psychology Today, they're saying the new term is wish psychosis. So I guess he just wished all that stuff was true
Are
and
you
said so many lies.
serious?
Yeah,
Wish
like that. The
psychosis.
theory is that he possibly wished it so much that it was true because he had told it so many times that he started to begin,
To
out of
believe
those
it.
wishes, started to begin to believe it. And I think
Yeah.
that's how he can be so indignant now. Like the fact that he still shows up, righteous indignation, claiming that he's never been accused
Wow.
of anything.
Wow.
I think he believes it at this point. I mean, I feel like that's the only possible.
What's up with this terminology nowadays? I mean, come on. I mean, I think about this though, and you guys, and I'm going there on this one. What if George Santos was black?
Mm,
Would he have made it all the way to Congress with the amount of support for him staying in? I don't think so.
I
That's
don't
just
think
my take on it. I mean, when you
maybe.
have a president of the United States being asked for his birth certificate,
Mm,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah.
Like
I
he,
actually think. You mean if he was black and told all the same lies?
Yes,
And this whole situation's exactly the same except he's black?
exactly.
He would have made it to Congress.
mm,
Really? You think so?
or
Absolutely.
Herschel
They
Walker.
care.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
yeah, Herschel
Herschel
Walker.
Walker,
Yeah,
damn. They care more
yeah.
about their seats than
You're
they
right.
care about the candidate. I
Yeah.
don't think this
Okay.
is I don't think this is a race thing at all. That guy could have been purple and he would have made it to Congress.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It might
That's
be a political thing. I don't think if he was a
It's
Democrat, he would have. Yeah,
yeah.
completely political. That is the
yeah.
only reason why he's still. You saw Kevin McCarthy's backing off a little bit on him. He's like, yeah.
Well,
Kevin McCarthy said the funniest thing, which is sort of what we've all been thinking. He was like, there was something about him that didn't quite sit right.
oh,
That's
you
what he said.
think?
That's what he said like 2 days ago. He said that. I was like, oh my god, that's a
Wow.
You think?
horrible defense of your like not kicking him out of Congress.
Oh
Yeah.
my
There's something
gosh.
about him that
It's
didn't
just
quite sit right.
I don't know. I cannot put my finger on it.
And then he showed up in drag, and then that was enough.
There are, yeah.
Exactly.
It's like that's
Hey,
the thing. That's actually
m-
the thing.
maybe Kevin got something going on around that. Never know.
Hmm.
Just
It's
never
all
know.
good.
Right?
um, but yeah, I mean, this was a great topic, Candy. I mean, so how how do you guys think that people can like stop lying? I mean, that's because I think that's where you were kind of going, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key, well, like what Tammy was pointing to, like once you start, you kind of it snowballs, and then you have to tell lie upon lie upon lie. And I think it's more about because I believe that what we resist persists. So if I say to myself, I gotta stop
Mm,
Mm.
lying now, the whole body is gonna be like, no, we don't, because we're gonna be in a hell of a lot of trouble if we stop lying right now.
right.
But I think first of all, to identify uh the lie, like I said, the delineation between if I've told a lie for survival or if I've told a lie to hurt someone, like I really want to be able to be really flat with myself about the fact that I have told a lie. So if I'm in a
Hmm.
psychosis, this is not for someone who's in psychosis and wants to believe everything that they're saying or does believe everything that they're saying. And I don't think they'd be able to hear it anyway. But for those of us who had a snowball situation, maybe started a relationship, told a little lie, and it became a bigger and bigger lie, or
Hmm.
with a family member, maybe you're being dishonest about something because you feel like you're protecting your family or protecting yourself from something. We want to talk about like what steps can I take so that I can unburden myself from that, because if you've ever told a lie, I mean, I know for myself the burden of, like you were saying earlier, Brian, of having to keep up the details,
Right.
keep your story straight, and then also not knowing who you told what.
Right.
And if it does come out, and having to deal with whatever the repercussions are of not having told on yourself, is greater than anything that we fear at the end of it, right? Like
Right.
walking around with
Right.
that burden. It's soul sucking. It can eventually kill you because of the stress, and it's ultimately not good for us. So I think the first thing is to explore the question of what is the biggest fear around having the truth be known. When you
Mm.
face that monster, whether it's a lie by omission, something that you're just not telling someone because you're afraid of how they're going to judge you, or a lie that you told to make things okay or to manipulate. What is your fear? And at the base of all of our fears is the loss of love.
Wow.
Hmm.
Right. So we got to be willing to go through that exploration. Like, what am I telling myself about this? What's ultimately going to happen? What am I thinking? Am I making it
Mm.
catastrophic? Am I turning it into something that it not even, it's not even going to be? I just think it's going to be that. We got to be willing to go down that exploration first and then check in with, what kind of healing you need to do around that.
Right.
Because all our fears come from trauma. Our fears come from, what's happened in the past. And so I think that's the beginning. I have more, but I feel like I want to save it until later, or see what you guys say about it.
Yeah, why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation because I think this is a really, really important topic,
So,
coming at it from the point of view of, self exploration and creating self-love. I love that, Candy. I really, really
yeah,
do.
Yeah, that was really well said.
Yeah, so we're going to take a break and we'll be back in 60 seconds, y'all.
awesome.
You can find all the Satonic products at our Go shop on Soulivity at go.soulivity.com now. Shop for beauty products, skincare, hair care. It is all there at the Go shop. Go shop Soulivity. And welcome back to This Morning with Soulivity. We are talking about Lies, lies, lies. Yeah. See, see. I know you
I
see.
keep thinking of the rumor song. Look at all these rumors, running every day. I just need some time.
Right?
Stop spreading.
And I keep thinking, I think it was in Vogue who sang lies, lies,
Yes. Oh,
you
God.
can
Oh,
write
okay, okay. That's
alibis.
hey, that's a playlist right there.
Right? So you know
We
it's
can make a lie playlist.
right. You know it's something in our social culture if that many musicians have written songs about it.
It's happening.
It's happening.
It's
Mm,
happening.
Yeah.
mm. But Candy, we're talking about. I love the fact that you went into about what's up underneath, right? We always have to unearth why we behave a certain way,
Yeah.
and I completely agree with you that people lie because of fear and the lack of self-love for themselves, to honor themselves by just telling the truth about themselves, about their experience, about their life, and whatever else is part of that. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I
Tammy,
think
what are your thoughts?
yeah, it's so Candy, what you said is so profound on so many levels. And we when we talk about how to I guess Brian, you asked, how do we stop the lying,
Yeah,
basically?
yeah,
The thing that came to me immediately, which is connected to what Candy said, is I think we need to create a society starting in our own homes
Mm.
that says no matter how you show up, I'm going to love you.
Mm.
mm, ooh,
No
Yeah.
matter what you say to me, I will never
snaps,
love you less than I do right now.
Yeah.
snaps.
So if we start that in our homes and it extends to our communities and then it extends to our towns and then I believe that would be like dropping a pebble in the middle of a still lake. The
Mhm.
ripple effect
Yeah,
of letting people
yeah.
know that no matter what you do and no matter what you say, I'm going to love you anyway.
Mm,
Yeah. 100%.
wow,
100%.
Then I don't
wow.
need to lie. Like I don't
Yeah.
need to, and Candy, it's interesting because I my last year my little daughter plays softball.
Yeah.
Now listen, that damn social media. A friend of mine in town took a picture of her climbing with some other friends into the window of the field house at the field.
Oh,
And she sent
uh-uh.
it to, and she texted me. She's like, "Hey, I just saw Bria." I was like, "Oh damn." um, but when she got home, I said, "How was practice?" She said, "Good." I was like, "Nothing interesting happened?" She said, "Nope, nothing at all." I gave her a chance.
Nothing that I wanna tell you.
And then I said, "A friend of mine saw you climbing through a window." And she was like, "What?"
What?
I said,
Did that
"Bria, no matter the next thing that comes out of your mouth
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
going to decide our relationship." So, because I said to her, I was like, it's fine if you want to stand there and tell me you didn't climb through. I never told her I had the picture.
Yeah.
So I just said, no matter what you say to me, I might be mad, but I'm never gonna love you less.
Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm.
Like it's just, and I do believe, like if we wrapped our arms around people like that, what if somebody had wrapped their arms around George Santos like that
Right?
Yeah, a long
and
time
said,
ago.
listen,
Yeah. Or even
a
today.
long time ago.
Yeah. And it's that
I thought
unconditionality, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, apparently, if it's true, he did grow up in Brazil, and maybe culturally where he grew up, like just acceptance of his homosexuality, like
Yeah,
Right,
clearly,
right.
and that's not to excuse what he's doing now, but you're right. Like if he had come from a base of it's okay who you are, how you are, you don't have to pretend anything else. I'm gonna love you no matter what, whether I like it or not, or I'm mad at you or not. I totally agree with that. If somebody would have
Exactly.
done that for him, we might not have this caustic monster.
well,
Next.
Candy, I think it's beyond like lying George Santos. It's people that are homophobic, people that are anti-Semitic, people that are
Right,
racist. Like
right.
all of that is like
So,
like when you talk, I think if like I said before, if we wrapped people around around, like, put our arms around them with love and confidence that, like, Candy, to your point, you're not going to lose my love.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things would be different in this world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely. This is a really good topic, y'all. I
Candy's
mean,
the topic queen.
I know, right? It's like
She's extra.
I'm just gonna
Well,
let
I
her. I'm gonna let her just do the topics every day from now on.
well, no, I can't go
Just
back
send us the topic.
So, yep. Tell us what we're talking about today.
Exactly.
Y'all don't know. I be waking up scrambling. I'm like, okay, what am I gonna bring? I
If
got
that's you scrambling, girl, damn.
Imagine if she had time.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to come back with Tami. I know you've got a topic that you want to kind of talk about.
Yeah.
So listen, everybody, stay tuned. Stay here. We'll be right back in just under 60 seconds.
Soulivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing want to remind you about the importance of continuing to follow public health guidelines to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your community. Please continue to wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Please visit these sites for further information about how to stay safe from COVID-19 into the new year. Remember, love protects us.
And we're back. Yes, love protects us. Please remember that COVID is not gone. It is still killing a lot of people every day. So if you're not vaccinated, please go out and get vaccinated. If you're uncomfortable in certain spaces, please continue to wear a mask. And again, one of the most effective tools you can do to not get COVID is washing your hands and sanitizing different areas. So thank you very much. Love protects us. So we're back with more from Soulivity, and this morning with Soulivity with my beautiful co-host, Tami Gaines and Candice Harper. Tami, you're next up, girl. What you got? What you got?
Yeah, I'm going to take us over into the sports world.
Okay.
And you don't need to be a sports enthusiast to jump into this conversation. But what I want to talk about is the have and the have-nots,
Oh.
and how that gap is widening, and the effect of that gap, whether it's education, healthcare, look, voting, like there is a widening gap. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I read this article this morning about a tennis player who is the daughter of a billionaire. She's 28 years old. Her name is Jessica Pegula, and she is on point to win her first Grand Slam tournament. So she's like, you know, running over people. But let me tell you about her background.
Uh-oh.
Her father is worth around like $7 billion. He made his fortune in oil and gas. After selling his company's assets, her parents brought the Sabres,
Damn.
the Buffalo Sabres, a National Hockey League team, and they bought the NFL's Buffalo Bills.
Wow.
So they bought the Sabres for $189 million in 2010. They bought the Bills for $1.4 billion in 2014. So here's my point, particularly with tennis. I'm not surprised that she's on track to win her first Grand Slam. Her parents had the resources to get her private coaches, the best equipment, build a tennis court in your backyard. Like, they had the means to nurture what may have not even been a talent. She developed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I look at Venus and Serena, who came from like nothing, basically.
Right.
That's why it's so amazing that they made it, because they had everything against. So that's why I started thinking about the haves and the have-nots. You know, what happens with kids that have unbelievable natural talent, but they don't have the resources? For example, like Little League Baseball now, it costs a lot of money to be on the travel teams, those are the kids that end up going to college on full scholarships.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Does this, you know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, the have and the have-nots, that gap is real, and the way it
And,
affects people is real.
Tami, I have a personal story connected to this, right? Because whenever I would go out west to spend time with my family in California, we'd always go play tennis
Mm,
with my grandfather, who played with like gosh, what's the guy's name? Pancho Sanchez, and
mm,
knew all the greats personally. We go to any tennis club in the local LA area, maybe Hollywood Hills, but they all knew him, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Thomas. We know, he was
mhm,
that good.
mhm,
But we'd also go to Compton,
mhm,
and we'd go to the tennis courts that were there, and there were some, and the tennis court was right next to the basketball court, and they both were packed, and there would be amazing players, both basketball and tennis, and sometimes both. The dude would leave the basketball court, go over
Go
and pick
take
up a
some swings.
racket and
Mhm,
start playing. And so I if any one of those people, male or female, by the way, and the females were playing the male players, and they were kicking some butt. I think they would be world champions. I think they would all dominate because they love the game, but they just don't have the resources to,
mhm,
you know, get into the realm of that higher levels of play. I remember um Venus and Serena, their father, he was approached by the junior league, and they were trying to pushing them into the junior league
Mm.
when they were young. And he said, no. He said, if Chrissy Everett and Tracy Austin can go pro, my girls can go pro.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. That's what they did. And so it's astonishing. I love this topic. I really, really do.
You know,
Phew.
it's interesting, Brian. Real quick, and then I want to hear from Candy. What you said about your grandfather. So, my grandmother um, introduced us to tennis when we were, I don't know, I think it was like 5.
Mm-hmm.
So we would play indoors in the wintertime, which was really interesting because you can imagine like
Yeah.
what that composition looked like in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'd go. She lived in Hartford, like right on the border of West Hartford. Beautiful neighborhood, beautiful house. But to your point, we would go to the courts in Keeney Park, which is where the black people were. Tennis, basketball, exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Her belief was that if we could potentially raise other tennis players up if we played there. And
Mm.
Wow.
inevitably at some point she'd be like, "Hey, do you guys want to come hit?" She'd be mixing up everyone on the court. She would mix and match. So we ended up playing with like complete strangers, different skill levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I get that. I get that.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm,
I'm gonna
mm.
let Candy drop
This
her
is
wisdom on us.
I'm preparing myself.
Me
well,
too. Let me get my piece of paper and a pen.
I know.
that was a great. I don't know that I have anything that's so life changing around this, but I do in listening to what you guys are saying, because I don't pay a lot of attention to sports in general, but I am a big advocate of passion and dedication, and the rewards of passion and dedication, and aware that there are such disparities, right? So
Yeah.
Brian, you mentioned about Venus and Serena, and so because they're not just phenomenal because they're phenomenal because their story is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Yes.
main
Yes.
disparities. And and because of their father's dedication and hopefully their passion. But I think that I'm always the silver lining girl. Like, so then what do we do? How do we
Well, that's important, though. It's
yeah.
important.
Yeah, so my mind goes to, as you guys were talking, my mind goes to, what would be available, what would be possible around creating passion and dedication in our communities and also fostering it. So Dr. Wayne Dyer said, "Don't die with your music in you."
Mm-hmm.
And basically what he was saying is that whatever it is that you love and want to engage in, it's that doing what you need to do in order to have that happen. And it's that resiliency. So the example you mentioned with the woman who had the billionaire father, it's like, yeah, she had everything afforded to her. And the hope would be that yes, she's very fortunate, but that she does have that passion and dedication. Because I think without it, it doesn't matter what's given to you, it's an empty, it's an empty accomplishment, or it's an empty, I don't know anything about her except for what you've mentioned about her. But I think that passion and dedication is the real value here. And rather than think
Mhm.
in terms of economically, how do we make it equitable, which that's important. I'm saying it's not that it's not important, but I think first it's how do we infuse passion and dedication? Because one thing that we have as people of color is resilience.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
passion and dedication is something that we haven't always been afforded. And so I think that has to come first before we can, and I'm talking on a community scale, so it's kind of, general and esoteric. But before we can actually change the economic disparity, that passion and dedication, and that willingness to see that something beyond what I think is possible is possible.
Yeah.
And that's what
Good
we need
point.
to infuse in our communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a way because I remember when I was growing up, we knew about our heroes and we knew about um what they went through to get where they were in the world, and that we knew that there was going to have to be, to your point, uh dedication, commitment,
Mhm.
along with responsibility and accountability for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that gets missed, and that we have a young generation that has seen people become superstars just on the internet, right, by
Hmm.
posting and doing different things, and of course they want that too, but that's just one path, and that typically the path is through some hard work,
Yeah.
and that you do have to pay your dues, and you do have to commit
Yeah.
yourself to excellence.
But
I
even that,
mean,
I mean, like these young content creators, even that with passion and dedication, that is the work, right? That
yes,
that
yes,
consistency, that knowing that
yes.
I'm connected to something bigger than I am, and that continuing to show up and create and be a beacon. Like I think there are a lot of different avenues for that.
Yeah, and I think that there's a misnomer that it's like back in the day when everybody wanted to be a superstar singer, right? That I think that this overnight success mentality that's really false.
Yeah.
That no, these people put in hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of perfecting their craft and doing what they do, and keeping at it because they knew that they wanted to accomplish their dream. Tammy, you had something.
Yeah, I was thinking about what Candy said, which is really so interesting that you're not into sports, but you nailed the single thing that separates okay athletes from great athletes,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
In
it's
in,
true.
in any sport.
Yeah.
Um, but then you brought it back to our community, and I think the other thing that we don't have, like we might be resilient, but we're not engaged.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
see that like, when I go to the school to PTA meetings, there's like, there's a bunch of Karens there, but not a whole lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so
Showing up.
yeah, there's like a sense of engagement, which I think we talked about the last time. Like my thing is economic empowerment because I think it gets people engaged. So I
Yeah,
Hmm.
think
yeah.
the combination of like passion, purpose, engagement, maybe that is what we need to start closing this wealth gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, when I think about, even here at Soulivity, because, you kind of mentioned a couple of the mantras that we have here. And I think I need to remind people that yes, your passion, your purpose can get you to a high quality of life, but there's also some skills and acumen that you have to do on a
Mhm.
consistent basis to maintain that high quality of life.
Yeah.
And this dedication and commitment piece is one of them.
Mhm.
And so Wow, this is a really good conversation. Maybe we can expound on this again,
Yeah.
because um, I think that specifically in communities of color, there are some different dynamics that need to be addressed, and basically some support, right, on moving people ahead, and even bringing back some of, some of that old time religion around, you know listen, you got to work, you got to put in the work, and you have to believe in a dream, and you have to be the best, and that's how you get to where people say you're the best at what you
Well,
do.
If
I
you
want.
have, go ahead, Candy.
I was just going to say, Brian, I want to push back a little bit on you have to be the best. Because I feel like that's sort of like a colonized sort
Hmm.
of way that we've been um, disenfranchised. So this idea that I have to be the best, like we're all only competing against ourselves, even in sports, right? I
Hmm.
have to be my best.
Right.
Right? Because if I'm looking and comparing myself to other people, then I'm in a state of, compare, despair, lack. But if I'm
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
thinking in terms of I am dedicated because it's in alignment with who I am,
Hmm.
that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down, the understanding who I am.
Right.
I just have to be my best and put everything I got into it. Like I look at, and this might sound like a silly example, but like a Beyonce.
Hmm.
That's Tammy, that's I think why I got the passion and dedication thing, because I think that, like music and performance is one of those things that's very similar
Right.
in that sense. But it's that being able to just give it all. And I'm not saying she's a perfect person, but I think she's a perfect example of someone who gets on stage. Mentality is not, let me be the best over everybody else. Let me be absolutely everything I can be, and learn that what I know I can be can get bigger and bigger.
But
Absolutely.
let me, if I can,
Hmm.
to bring it back to the original topic. If I am being the best that I can be, and I'm at the top of my game, if I don't know anybody, if I have no network, if I have no exposure, what do I do with all this greatness?
That's a good point.
Mm. Well,
That's a good
I
point.
mean, I think you should still know people and have exposure, but I just don't think that it's about, that it has to be something that you pull from internal. Like you want to network with people and things like that. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm specifically around sport. Like if we go back to like sports and being a professional athlete,
Mm.
So,
I mean, there's a million stories out there of people that what was the movie, the football movie where the big black guy got adopted by the white family?
blindside.
Oh, blindside. Yeah.
Blindside.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would his whole story would have never happened
exactly.
if, a white family didn't take him in and give him shelter
Right.
Oh, so you're
and
talking about,
tutor him and
yeah.
like
Right.
all of this stuff. So
Right.
that's why I talk about this have and have not, the wealth gap.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So, I want to just make sure that everybody's clear on like the language that I'm using, because again, I agree with you, Candy, that there is a interpretation of being the best being more historical in a negative sense within communities of color.
Mm.
I mean that by being my personal best.
Mhm.
And I'll relate it to something like being a musician. Um Me doing the work and me understanding my instrument was something that I had to do, and I had to put in the time and the effort to become the best on that instrument that I could be. And that if once you start putting in a competitive kind of nature into it, you lose something. And that you lose yourself, because now you're trying to compare your creativity and your uniqueness to someone else. And that's a straight line to nowhere. And so being your personal best and having a dream about what it would be like for you in your particular acumen or skill set, and working hard to make that real is one aspect. But also, again, to bringing it back to Tami, what you're talking about, being the best and having a good life and using your skill to further yourself personally, professionally, economically. There's other skills that you have to be good at, and that you have to be good at creating a support system. You have to be good at communicating with others and placing yourself in positions where people will see and know your talent. Um, and that economically, those things don't exist as much within communities of color because of economic situations. They just don't.
Yeah, and if your whole entire world is, 2 square blocks,
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
why it's not like it's easy
Absolutely.
to say, oh, you should have a network. Well, how do you create a network if you have a limited, worldview?
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
I hear what you're saying. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow.
So that was my whole thing when I first talked about this story. Like, of course, this girl is good. I
Mm,
agree with Candy. She has to have passion and drive and
Yeah.
discipline. But at
right.
the end of the day, I'm like, of course she's that good.
Yeah. You
Like
know,
you could throw money at her mediocrity and make her better.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, again, what if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around? Does it make a sound, right? So if that person isn't in a place to be noticed,
Exactly.
Yeah.
like, wow, she's
Exactly.
really good. I mean, again, this is why King Richard took Venus and Serena and had them go pro,
Yeah.
because they would have been those trees falling in the forest where nobody would have seen them.
Mhm.
They would have been the best nobodies.
Yeah. So then the solution is how do we get to that place where people, where things aren't available become available? It's almost like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, because you have to have some sort of faith in what you're doing in order to even step out of those 2 blocks,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's where the conundrum is.
I think again, we can learn a lesson from the story that we were just talking about. One of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways is you got to take risk. You got
Yeah,
to like throw yourself and put yourself in a situation where you'll be seen, if that's where you need to go and be in a network that's outside of those 2 square blocks, right? Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's unknown, but you know what's the worst thing that can happen? That
But what
you
if,
Yeah, go
Brian, I
ahead.
just want to ask you a question.
Hmm.
What if we're talking about like a 10-year-old kid?
mm,
You can only
Well,
take as much risk as your parents or guardians are exposing you to. You know what I mean?
absolutely, and that's why I preface it by saying this is just one way, and that's specifically for people who may be older, who can actually take that risk, and they maybe understand on some level that, hey, if I'm going to go here, this is what I'm going to have to do, right?
mm,
It's tough though.
Yeah, and there's
I
other. I
think the
mean,
solution is with
yeah.
like with the s- like let's rescue the little kids because some adults, as you know,
Yeah,
are very stuck. Like if you've lived your entire life a certain way, you're not going to decide.
right,
It's rare to
yeah,
right.
decide at like 40. You know what? I'm going to go in a different direction. So I don't actually know what the solution is, but I know that my heart is saying like it really starts by somehow like getting young people in these communities, getting them exposed,
yeah.
like working
Yeah,
within the schools to take them on field trips, maybe to some places that you wouldn't normally see or go.
Yeah,
right.
and that takes economics. I see what you're saying. It's like, yeah,
It's a vicious circle.
yeah, and it almost kind of has to happen congruently, right? Like taking them on those trips so they're exposed so that they do get to start having a sense that there's something bigger. And then maybe that sense is like a seed of, how can I get in touch with my passion? How can I get in touch with what dedication?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, this is another great topic we need to like expand on. Well, because it's I mean, Tami, I completely agree that this has to start with young people, I mean very young people, where where you nurture that natural sense of awe and wonder that every child is born into, where when they
Mhm.
come out into the world and they're looking at everything and it's like, wow, everything is brand new. And I my hope and my wish is that parenting and our communities would continue that process and just let that child expand upon that so much more throughout their entire life,
Mm.
where yeah, that they find something that they really love to do and they're celebrated for it, whatever it is, and that they're supported in taking that as far and as vast and as wide and as deep as they want, and loved for it,
Uh,
and loved for it.
well said. I wish that would happen. Um,
Yeah,
Now you ready? Here's part two for the next
I
time
have a
we talk
dream.
about
No.
this. Um, this is the thread. We develop all this great potential in our kids. We encourage them to expand their horizons. We encourage them to leave the community. How do we get them to come back?
Mm,
That's
How do we make sure that people are going back once they've been whatever their version of successful is?
yeah,
Because I believe that is the other, like, that's a really big thing in you know, brown communities.
yeah,
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
once people make it, they're out.
right,
yeah.
right. Well, that's a very American thing, particularly.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
because I mean,
Eastern cultures, they take care of their communities.
yeah, and
Yes, they do, and they take care of their seniors. They make
Yeah,
sure the kids have what they need, like, yes.
right.
and I think cultures outside of the United States, they know their history, right? They permeate through, listen, this is our history and we don't want to make the same mistakes as we have done in the past. So we're going to remember this.
Mm,
Um because I think that's another part of it, right? Like
Right.
the more you know, the better, right? But
mm,
apparently, kind of tying both topics in, there's a whole segment of our population here that is now just willing to tell lies about everything now, and it's just their position. You know, I was reading about down in Florida where um, a new advanced placement AP course about African American history was blocked by the governor because of their new anti-CRT law. This is in
Did you say
high
Florida?
school. They blocked it.
This was in
And
Florida?
this was in Florida.
Do you
Go.
have any level of surprise to
Right.
No,
say that that was
no,
blocked
no,
by the
and see
governor?
that, and that's the sad part, and that's the sad part. I don't, right? And
Of
so
course it's gonna get blocked by that guy.
right, and so, I believe in sometimes that you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been, and I think all this ties in where it's like, listen, to move forward, sometimes you gotta look back
Mm,
and be taught about history and how to move forward and that kind of thing from our ancestors. And so, yeah.
Hmm.
Great topic though. Another great
It's a
topic.
lot to unravel.
Woo!
right? We have
Ooh,
to
I'm
solve
sweating
this.
over here. That's
We got
like,
some big things to solve. We
I
Yeah,
got
know, right?
we got a lot of work to do, you
So
guys.
so everybody, so tune back in at about noon. We'll have all this solved for you.
I'm sending you an email right now.
I know, right? Right.
and CC me.
I
Yes,
know.
the both of you.
President Biden, if you're out there, we have something coming your
CC
way.
Biden is who we should CC.
Right?
We have something going to you at the White House.
Yeah. Infrastructure was cute, but we have a real problem for you to solve.
Right. Ah, That's funny.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to thank both my co-hosts, Candice Harper and Tami Gaines today. You guys have always bring your A game to the show. Um, I love you both. Thank you for your words, your thoughts. Um, man, these are the discussions that we have here, and that I want to continue to have here on This Morning with Soulivity. So thank you both again.
Thank you, Brian. You make it easy.
That's my job.
Right?
Listen, we want to remind you that coming up in February, Tami is going to be hosting her own show here on Soulivity called Tami Talks.
Woo!
Yeah,
Yay.
Mondays.
Monday,
And
Monday.
and so that's going to be going on, and um, you can learn more about Candice Harper by going to her website at CandiceHarperLoveCoach.com. Candy, you got a special going on for people who are referred by Soulivity, I think.
Yes, yes. My special Soulivity promo, Soulivity 50. So with my one-on-one coaching or my Love Life Skills for Leaders group, if you were to join, it's 50% off if you have the promo code Soulivity 50.
Woohoo! So
Right?
go get it, y'all. Go
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
Listen, again, on behalf of all of us, I want to say thank you for joining us for another edition of This Morning with Soulivity. We hope that you come back and join us every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern, or you can listen to our rebroadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern for all of you on the West Coast. Until next time, keep on having those real conversations with passion and purpose. And we want you to create a life full of high quality living today. So we'll see you next time, y'all. Bye.
Bye.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.